She crashed his world with 4 words, "I'm sorry, husband." Azariah was running from a forced marriage when she grabbed the arm of Seattle's most dangerous man, Jaeha Kwon, the silent mafia boss who never speaks to women. One desperate lie. One public claim. Now she's trapped in a fake marriage with a man whose silence is legendary, whose power is absolute, and whose enemies are circling. But when he breaks his vow and speaks her name for the first time, everything changes. In a world built on control, can 2 people choose freedom? Can a marriage born from lies become the only truth worth fighting for? This is the silent vow, where silence shatters and power bows to something stronger. If you love intense slow-burn romance with high stakes, stay until the end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that will keep you hooked. The security guard's grip tightened on Azariah's arm as the voices grew louder at the entrance. She could hear her stepfather before she saw him, that commanding bark that had controlled her mother for the past 8 years, that had orchestrated her entire life into this nightmare. "My stepdaughter is here." Brunette, burgundy dress, about 5'7". "She's not well. We need to take her home." Azariah's pulse thundered in her ears. She'd run from her own engagement party 20 minutes ago, still wearing the ridiculously expensive dress Coulter had chosen, still feeling the phantom weight of the ring she'd left on the dessert table. The fundraising event she'd stumbled into was her last refuge, and now even that was collapsing. "Miss, please come with me," the security guard said, his voice professionally neutral but his intention clear. He was already steering her toward the exit where her stepfather and Coulter would be waiting, where the cage door would slam shut forever. Her eyes darted across the room, desperate, searching. Wealthy donors clustered in small groups, champagne flutes catching the light from crystal chandeliers. A string quartet played something classical and forgettable. And there, near the far wall, surrounded by a careful buffer of space that no one dared breach, stood a man who made everyone else in the room look like shadows. Jaeha Kwon. Even in a room full of Seattle's elite, he was unmistakable. Tall, impeccably dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than her stepfather's car, with dark hair styled back from a face that belonged on magazine covers if magazine covers featured men who could order your death with a nod. But it wasn't his looks that made people keep their distance. It was the aura of controlled danger that radiated from him like heat from a furnace. And it was the silence. Everyone in Seattle knew about Jaeha Kwon's role. The Korean-American businessman, though everyone knew his real business had nothing to do with the legitimate ventures listed on his tax returns, never spoke directly to women. Ever. He communicated through his right-hand man, the stone-faced Minrock Kim who stood 2 steps behind him now, or through written notes, or through pointed silence that somehow conveyed more than words ever could. Women had tried. God, had they tried. Socialites, actresses, politicians' daughters, they'd all attempted to be the one to break through that infamous reserve. They'd all failed. Some said it was cultural. Others whispered about a traumatic past. A few claimed he simply hated women, though that didn't explain the substantial donations he made to women's shelters and domestic violence prevention programs. The mystery made him magnetic. The danger made him untouchable. And right now, he was Azariah's only option. She wrenched her arm free from the security guard with more force than she'd known she possessed. Her heels clicked against marble as she crossed the room, her breath coming fast, her mind screaming that this was insane even as her body moved with desperate purpose. The buffer zone around Jaeha Kwon seemed to thicken as she approached. She felt eyes turning toward her, conversations faltering. Minrock stepped forward slightly, his hand moving beneath his jacket in a gesture that was unmistakably threatening. Azariah didn't stop. She reached Jaeha just as her stepfather's voice boomed from the entrance. There she is. Her hand closed around Jaeha's forearm, warm, solid, tensed beneath expensive fabric. She felt him go absolutely still, felt the shift in the room's energy like a string pulled too tight. "I'm sorry I left without telling you, husband." The words dropped into the sudden silence like stones into still water. Time seemed to fracture. The string quartet's bow scraped to a discordant halt. Conversations died mid-syllable. Every eye in the room fixed on them, on her hand gripping his arm, on her desperate expression, on his utterly impassive face. Azariah felt her stepfather and Coulter approaching, heard their footsteps falter as they registered the scene. Her heart was going to explode. Her gamble was insane. Jaeha Kwon was going to shake her off, maybe have Minrock remove her forcibly, and then she'd have nothing. Worse than nothing. She'd have humiliated herself in front of Seattle's most dangerous man, and she'd still end up dragged back to Coulter and that suffocating political marriage. Jaeha Kwon looked down at her hand on his arm. His expression remained unreadable, but something flickered in his dark eyes, calculation, maybe, or curiosity. The silence stretched so long Azariah thought she might break, might start babbling explanations or apologies or both. Then he moved. Slowly, deliberately, Jaeha reached into his inner jacket pocket. He pulled out a platinum ring, simple, expensive, the kind of thing a man like him would wear if he wore jewelry at all. Without breaking eye contact with her, he slid it onto his left ring finger. And nodded once. The room erupted. Shocked murmurs rose like a wave. Someone dropped a glass. Azariah heard her stepfather make a strangled sound somewhere between fury and disbelief. But Jaeha's eyes never left hers, and in that moment, she understood that she'd just made a deal with the devil. His hand, large, controlled, radiating quiet power, moved to cover hers where she still gripped his arm. The touch sent electricity racing up her spine. Then he turned, positioning himself slightly in front of her, a human shield between her and the rest of the room. Minrock materialized at Jaeha's other side, his phone already out. "Sir?" His voice was low, controlled, but Azariah heard the underlying tension. Jaeha's gaze finally left hers, tracking to where her stepfather and Coulter had frozen halfway across the room. Marcus Valles looked like he'd swallowed glass. Coulter Wainwright's handsome face had gone red with rage barely contained beneath his politician's mask. "Mr. Kwon," Marcus recovered first, his voice booming with false joviality. "I think there's been some misunderstanding. My stepdaughter is unwell. She's supposed to be at her engagement party right now." Jaeha raised one hand. The gesture was minimal, barely a movement, but Marcus fell silent immediately. The power in that small motion was staggering. Minrock stepped forward, his phone still in hand. "Mr. Valles. Mr. Wainwright. I'm sure you're aware that you're interrupting a private event. Mr. Kwon's wife was briefly detained by your security concern. As you can see, there's no issue here." Wife. The word hung in the air like a physical presence. "That's ridiculous," Coulter snapped, his control fracturing. "She's engaged to me. We were at our engagement party an hour ago. This is some kind of... Are you calling Mr. Kwon a liar?" Minrock's voice dropped several degrees. The threat in those words was unmistakable. Azariah felt Jaeha's hand tighten slightly on hers, not painful, just present. Grounding. She realized she was shaking. Coulter's jaw worked. He was a city councilman with aspirations for state office, handsome and charismatic and used to getting what he wanted. But even his ego recognized the danger of directly challenging Jaeha Kwon. "I want to hear it from her," Coulter said finally, his eyes boring into Azariah. "Azariah, stop this nonsense. You're embarrassing yourself and you're embarrassing me. Your mother is worried sick." The mention of her mother sent a spike of guilt through Azariah's chest, but it was followed immediately by white-hot anger. Her mother who'd stood silent while Marcus arranged this marriage. Her mother who'd stopped fighting for anything years ago. "I'm exactly where I want to be," Azariah said, and was surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Marcus's face darkened. "Young lady, you will stop this ridiculous act immediately. Mr. Kwon, I apologize for my stepdaughter's behavior. She's been under a great deal of stress with the wedding planning." Jaeha moved. He released Azariah's hand only to slide his arm around her waist, pulling her against his side with a proprietary ease that made her breath catch. The gesture was unmistakably possessive. His body was warm and solid against hers, and she could feel the controlled strength in every line of him. Then he leaned down, his lips near her ear, and she felt rather than heard the exhale of breath that might have been words if he'd actually spoken them. But he didn't. Instead, he straightened and looked at Minrock with one raised eyebrow. Minrock's expression remained professionally neutral, but something that might have been surprise flickered across his face. Mr. Kwon says his wife looks tired. He's taking her home. He thanks you for your concern, but suggests you direct your attention to your own business rather than his marriage. The dismissal was absolute. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Azariah had never seen him at a loss for words. It was almost worth the insanity of what she'd just done. "This isn't over," Coulter said quietly, his politician's smile finally dropping away to reveal something cold and mean underneath. Not by a long shot. Jaeha's response was to turn away, guiding Azariah with him toward a side exit. Minrock fell into step behind them, and suddenly they were moving through a private corridor, away from the shocked whispers and her stepfather's impotent fury. Azariah's legs felt like water. The adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation was draining away, leaving her hollow and shaking. She'd just claimed to be married to Jaeha Kwon. He'd backed up her lie, and she had absolutely no idea what happened next. They emerged into a private garage where a black Mercedes waited, engine already running. A driver stood by the open rear door, his face carefully blank. Jaeha guided her into the back seat, slid in beside her, and Minrock took the front passenger seat. The door closed. The car began to move. And finally, Jaeha released her. Azariah pressed herself against her side of the car, her heart still racing. In the confined space, Jaeha seemed even more imposing. His face remained unreadable as he pulled out his phone and began typing rapidly. Minrock's phone chimed. He read something, nodded, and glanced back at Azariah. "Mr. Kwon wants to know if you're injured." "No," Azariah managed. "I'm fine." She laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "I'm absolutely not fine. I just told everyone at that event that I'm married to your boss." Another chime. Minrock's mouth twitched. He's aware. He wants to know why. Where did she even start? The arranged marriage? Her stepfather's political machinations? The fact that she'd felt like a doll being positioned on a shelf for the past 6 months? "I needed an escape," she said finally, meeting Jaeha's dark eyes across the seat. "My stepfather arranged a marriage to Coulter Wainwright. Political connections, business deals, all very convenient for everyone except me. I ran. I ended up at that event. When I saw you, she swallowed hard. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have dragged you into my mess. You can drop me off anywhere. I'll figure something out." Jaeha studied her for a long moment, his expression revealing nothing. Then he went back to his phone, typing. Minrock's phone chimed again. "He says no." "No to what?" "To dropping you off. To letting you figure it out." Minrock's voice was carefully neutral. "You made a public claim. At a high-profile event, in front of witnesses that include 2 city council members, a state senator, and at least a dozen people with very active social media accounts. By now, your marriage to Mr. Kwon is already spreading through Seattle's social circles. Denying it now would damage his reputation and raise questions about his judgment." "Oh God." Azariah pressed her hands to her face. "I've ruined everything." Another chime. "He says you haven't ruined anything. But you have created a situation that requires management." "Management," Azariah repeated weakly. The car turned, heading away from the downtown core toward the waterfront where Seattle's most expensive properties overlooked Elliott Bay. Azariah's stomach sank as she realized where they were going. "He's taking you to his penthouse," Minrock confirmed, as if reading her mind. "You'll stay there while we address this situation." "Stay there? I can't just move in with him." Jaeha raised one eyebrow and gestured at her left hand. Azariah looked down at her bare ring finger, understanding flooding through her. "Right. Because we're married. Allegedly." Another typing session, another chime. "Mr. Kwon proposes the following arrangement. You maintain the fiction of marriage for a period of time sufficient to neutralize your stepfather's attempts to reclaim you. In exchange, you provide a public buffer that discourages the social climbing women who waste his time. You live in separate quarters, maintain professional boundaries, and make public appearances as necessary. When the situation resolves, you divorce quietly." It was insane. It was absolutely insane. It was also her only option. What about Coulter? Azariah asked. He's not going to just accept this. He's got political ambitions, and I was supposed to be part of his perfect image. Successful, young, biracial couple, it looked great in campaign photos. Jaeha's jaw tightened fractionally. He typed for longer this time. Mr. Kwon says that Mr. Wainwright's response is his concern, not yours. He asks if you accept his terms. Azariah looked at the man beside her. Jaeha Kwon, who never spoke to women, who ran Seattle's underground with ruthless efficiency, who just backed up her desperate lie without hesitation. His face remained impassive, but his eyes held something that might have been understanding. Why? She asked softly. Why help me? You don't know me. Jaeha regarded her for a moment, then reached for his phone again. But this time, instead of texting Minrock, he turned the screen toward her. Because no one should be owned. The words hit her like a physical blow. For the first time since her mother had announced her engagement to Coulter 6 months ago, someone understood. Someone saw past the pretty speeches about partnership and mutual benefit to the ugly truth underneath. She was property in a transaction. And Jaeha Kwon, for reasons she couldn't begin to fathom, was offering her a way out. I accept, Azariah said. Jaeha nodded once, then reached across the seat. For a startling moment, she thought he might touch her face, but instead he opened the small compartment near her knee and pulled out a velvet box. He opened it to reveal a ring, white gold or platinum, with a single diamond that caught the passing streetlights. It was beautiful in its simplicity, elegant without being ostentatious. The kind of ring a powerful man might actually choose for a woman he cared about. Jaeha gestured at her hand. Azariah extended her left hand, trying to ignore how much it trembled. He slid the ring onto her finger with steady precision. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. She stared at the diamond, at the weight of it, at what it represented. A lie. A shield. A bargain with a man who trafficked in power and silence. Thank you, she whispered. Jaeha's gaze held hers for a moment longer, and she could have sworn she saw something shift in his expression, something almost like respect. Then he nodded and turned to look out the window, ending the conversation as effectively as if he'd walked out of the room. The car pulled into an underground garage beneath a sleek high-rise that screamed expensive even in its minimalism. They rode an elevator that required both a key card and a fingerprint scan, rising past floor after floor until it opened directly into a penthouse that took Azariah's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Elliott Bay and the Seattle skyline. The space was open, modern, decorated in blacks and grays and whites, with occasional touches of deep blue. It was beautiful and sterile and felt more like a high-end hotel than a home. Jaeha moved through the space with easy familiarity, Minrock trailing behind. Azariah stood near the elevator, suddenly aware that she was still wearing the burgundy dress from her engagement party, that she had no clothes, no phone, she'd left it in her purse at the party, no anything. Jaeha turned back, noticed her frozen position, and frowned slightly. More typing. Mr. Kwon will show you to your room, Minrock said. Tomorrow, someone will take you shopping for necessities. Tonight, there should be suitable sleepwear in the guest suite. He paused. He also says you should eat something. You look pale. I'm fine, Azariah started, but her stomach chose that moment to growl audibly, betraying her. Something that might have been amusement flickered across Jaeha's face. He gestured for her to follow and led her down a hallway to a bedroom that was easily twice the size of her apartment's living room. The bed was enormous, dressed in white linens that probably cost more than her monthly rent. An ensuite bathroom was visible through an open door, all marble and chrome. Jaeha opened a closet, pulled out a drawer, and extracted what looked like expensive sleepwear, silk pajamas in charcoal gray, several sizes too large but clean and soft. He set them on the bed, then pointed to the bathroom and made a washing motion. Shower, Azariah translated. Got it. He nodded, then surprised her by moving to a tablet mounted on the wall. He typed something and turned the screen toward her. Kitchen is down the hall, second door on left. Help yourself to anything. Your bathroom has everything you need. Lock your door if it makes you comfortable. You're safe here. The last sentence made her throat tight. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Jaeha studied her for a moment longer, then did something unexpected. He reached out and gently touched her shoulder, just a brief contact, there and gone before turning and leaving the room. The door closed softly behind him. Azariah sank onto the bed, the ring heavy on her finger. Safe. When was the last time she'd felt safe? Certainly not in the past 6 months. Maybe not in the past 8 years, since her mother had married Marcus and their quiet life had been consumed by his need for control and status. She should be terrified. She'd just tied herself to a man who was probably a criminal, who definitely had enemies, who communicated through silence and intermediaries. But as she looked at the ring on her finger, at the soft pajamas on the pristine bed, at the closed door she could lock if she wanted, all she felt was a strange, fragile hope. After the shower, which was as luxurious as everything else in this place, Azariah put on the oversized silk pajamas and padded down the hallway in bare feet. The kitchen was a chef's dream, all professional-grade appliances and marble countertops. She found leftover Chinese food in the refrigerator, helped herself, and was heating it in the microwave when Jaeha appeared in the doorway. He changed into casual clothes, black pants, and a fitted charcoal t-shirt that revealed lean muscle. His hair was slightly damp. He looked more human like this, less like an untouchable figure, and more like a man who was tired and dealing with an unexpected situation. He raised an eyebrow at her appropriation of his leftovers. You said help myself, Azariah reminded him, then felt ridiculous because he couldn't respond. Sorry. This is going to take some getting used to. Jaeha moved to the refrigerator, pulled out a bottle of water, and set it next to her on the counter. Then he leaned against the opposite counter, arms crossed, watching her with that unreadable expression. So, Azariah said, because the silence felt too heavy. How does this work? The not talking thing. Is it all women or just in public? He pulled out his phone and typed, then showed her the screen. All women in public. Most women in private. You're an exception now because we're supposedly married. It would look strange if I never spoke to my wife. But you're still not actually speaking to me, Azariah pointed out. The truth. I haven't spoken directly to a woman in 7 years. Why? The microwave beeped. Jaeha gestured for her to eat. A clear deflection. She wanted to push, but exhaustion was catching up with her, and she'd already asked this man for more than she had any right to expect. She ate in silence while he watched, his presence oddly comfortable despite the strangeness of the situation. When she finished, he took her plate, rinsed it, and put it in the dishwasher with economical movements. Thank you, Azariah said. For dinner. For all of this. I know I keep saying it, but I don't know what else to say. Jaeha typed, you should sleep. Tomorrow will be complicated. What happens tomorrow? Damage control. Public narrative management. And we need to establish our story in case anyone asks detailed questions. Right. Because they were supposedly married, and married people knew things about each other. When they met. How long they'd been together. Why they'd kept it secret. Any thoughts on what that story should be? Azariah asked. Jaeha's mouth curved very slightly, not quite a smile, but close. He typed, we can work on it tomorrow. Tonight, you should rest. He was right. Azariah was running on adrenaline and fear, and now that she was safe, or as safe as she could be in a fake marriage to a mafia boss, the crash was inevitable. Good night, she said. Jaeha nodded. But as she turned to leave, his hand shot out, catching her wrist gently. She froze. He released her immediately, then typed quickly on his phone. One rule, don't leave the penthouse without Minrock or me. It's not safe. Because of my stepfather or because of your enemies? Both. The words sent a chill down her spine. This was real. The danger was real. She wasn't just hiding from an unwanted marriage anymore. She'd stepped into a much larger and more dangerous game. Understood, she said softly. This time when she walked away, he didn't stop her. Azariah woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and a moment of complete disorientation. Then memory flooded back. The engagement party. The desperate lie. Jaeha's ring on her finger. She sat up, looking at the diamond in the morning light. It was real. All of it was real. A soft knock on the door made her jump. Yes! The door opened to reveal a middle-aged Korean woman carrying a tray. "Good morning, Mrs. Kwon. Mr. Kwon asked me to bring you breakfast and to let you know that a stylist will arrive at 10 to help with your wardrobe." Mrs. Kwon. The title felt surreal. "Thank you, Azariah managed." "And you are?" "Mrs. Park. I manage the household." She set the tray on the bedside table, coffee, fruit, pastries that smelled incredible. "Mr. Kwon is in his office. He said you're welcome to join him when you're ready, or you may have the morning to yourself." After Mrs. Park left, Azariah showered again, put the silk pajamas back on since she had no other clothes, and ventured out of her room. The penthouse looked different in daylight, still sterile, but with touches of personality she'd missed last night. Expensive art on the walls. A shelf of books in Korean and English. Photographs in simple frames showing Jaeha with people she assumed were family or associates. She found his office down another hallway, the door slightly ajar. She knocked softly. Jaeha looked up from his laptop. He was dressed for business in a crisp white shirt, his hair perfectly styled. For a moment, he just stared at her in his oversized pajamas, and she felt ridiculous. Then his mouth quirked and he gestured for her to enter. The office was lined with books and had the same stunning view as the rest of the penthouse. Jaeha typed something on his phone and turned it toward her. "You should have slept longer." "I'm used to waking early," Azariah said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "So, our story. Should we get that straight before people start asking questions?" He nodded and pulled up a document on his laptop, turning the screen so she could see. He'd already started outlining possibilities. Option 1. Whirlwind romance, married quickly in private ceremony. Option 2. Met months ago, slow burn, kept private due to business concerns. Option 3. Arranged marriage between families, grew into real affection. Not option 3, Azariah said immediately. "I just escaped an arranged marriage. I'm not claiming to be in another one." Jaeha nodded and deleted that option. He typed, "Option 2 gives us more flexibility. We can say we met at a previous charity event 6 months ago. Kept relationship private because of my business and your family situation. Finally married quietly 3 months ago. Why keep it secret that long after getting married? Protection. Your family wouldn't have approved. Neither would some of my business associates. We were waiting for the right time to announce it publicly. It was plausible. Almost believable, even." "And last night?" Azariah asked. "I accidentally revealed it when I ran from my engagement party." He typed, "You panicked when your family tried to force you into the marriage with Wainwright. You'd been hiding our relationship from them. When you saw me at the event, you instinctively came to me for protection and revealed the truth." "That's actually not far from what really happened," Azariah said wryly. Jaeha's expression was unreadable, but something in his eyes might have been agreement. He typed more. "The stylist will help establish your image as my wife. We need you to look the part. This afternoon, we'll need to make a public appearance together. All ready?" He turned his laptop to show her a news website. The headline made her stomach drop. "Mystery woman claims marriage to Seattle's most eligible bachelor, who is Azariah Valles?" There was a photo from last night, slightly grainy but unmistakable, her hand on Jaeha's arm, his hand covering hers, the moment frozen in digital permanence. The article was full of speculation, rumors, and quotes from unnamed sources. "Oh God," Azariah breathed. Jaeha typed, "This is manageable. But we need to control the narrative before it controls us." A phone rang, not his cell, but a desk line. Jaeha answered it, listened for a moment, then his expression darkened fractionally. He covered the receiver and typed one-handed, "Your stepfather is calling from the lobby. He wants to see you." Azariah's blood ran cold. "Tell him I'm not here." "Are you sure?" "Confronting him with me present might be useful." She thought about Marcus, his thundering voice, his ability to make her feel small and powerless, his absolute certainty that he knew what was best. Then she looked at Jaeha, at the calm strength in his posture, at the ring on her finger. "I'll see him," she said. "But you're there the whole time." Jaeha nodded and spoke into the phone Korean. too rapid for her to catch more than a few words. He hung up and typed, "Minrock is bringing him up. You might want to change first." Right. The oversized pajamas probably weren't the best power statement. Azariah hurried back to her room, threw on the dress from last night since it was literally her only option, and was trying to do something with her hair when Mrs. Park appeared with a simple black dress. "I thought you might need this," she said kindly. "It should fit well enough until the stylist arrives." The dress fit perfectly, which raised questions Azariah didn't have time to consider. She made it back to the living room just as the elevator opened and Minrock escorted Marcus inside. Her stepfather looked like he hadn't slept. His expensive suit was rumpled, his face drawn. But his eyes burned with fury as they landed on Azariah. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Jaeha materialized beside Azariah before she could respond, his presence a solid wall between her and Marcus. Minrock positioned himself near the elevator, blocking the exit. "Mr. Valles," Minrock said evenly. "I remind you that you're a guest in Mr. Kwon's home. You'll speak respectfully or you'll leave." Marcus's jaw worked. His gaze shifted to Jaeha, who stood silent and immovable. "I need to speak to my stepdaughter." "Alone." Jaeha shook his head once. "This is a family matter. She's my wife." The words came from Minrock, reading from his phone. "That makes her welfare my business. You'll say what you came to say, and then you'll leave." Marcus turned back to Azariah, his expression hardening. "Your mother is devastated. Coulter's family is humiliated. You've made us all look like fools." "I made my own choice," Azariah said, forcing her voice steady. "You're 25 years old. You don't know what you want. Coulter is a good man with an excellent future. He can give you the life you deserve." "The life you want for me," Azariah corrected. "Not the life I chose. You chose this." Marcus gestured at Jaeha with barely concealed contempt. "You married a," he caught himself, but the word hung in the air anyway. "Criminal. Gangster. Thug." Jaeha remained perfectly still, but Azariah felt tension coil through him like a spring winding tighter. "I married a man who respects my autonomy," Azariah said clearly. "Which is more than I can say for you or Coulter." Marcus's face flushed. "You have no idea what you've stepped into. No idea what kind of man." "I suggest," Minrock interrupted smoothly, "that you stop speaking. Mr. Kwon is being remarkably patient with your insults, but his patience is not infinite." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Marcus's face. He might bluster and command in his world of political connections and business deals, but Jaeha Kwon existed in a different sphere entirely. One where real power flowed through channels that didn't care about propriety or social standing. "Azariah," Marcus tried again, his tone shifting to something that might have been pleading in another man. "Think about your future. Your mother's position. If you embarrass Coulter's family, if you damage his political prospects, then I guess he'll have to find another accessory for his campaign photos," Azariah said flatly. Something dangerous flashed in Marcus's eyes. "You'll regret this. Both of you." His gaze shifted to Jaeha. "Whatever you think you've gained by taking her, it's not worth the trouble. Her family has connections. Coulter has connections. You've made powerful enemies." Jaeha's response was to step closer to Azariah, his hand coming to rest on the small of her back, warm, steady, possessive. Then he pulled out his phone with his free hand and typed rapidly before handing it to Minrock. "Mr. Kwon says he doesn't make enemies," Minrock read aloud. "He eliminates them. And he suggests you consider carefully whether you want to join that list." The threat was delivered in Minrock's professional tone, but its impact was visceral. Marcus went pale. "Are you threatening me?" "Mr. Kwon doesn't make threats. He makes observations. He observes that if you continue harassing his wife, if you or Mr. Wainwright attempt to interfere with her freedom or safety, he will consider it a personal insult. And he has very permanent ways of addressing personal insults." The silence that followed was suffocating. Marcus looked between Jaeha's impassive face and Azariah's raised chin, and she saw the moment he realized he'd lost. "This isn't over," he said finally. "Yes," Azariah said quietly. "It is. Tell my mother I'm sorry for worrying her, but I'm where I need to be. Tell Coulter to find someone who actually wants to marry him. And tell yourself that you don't own me anymore." Marcus's mouth opened, closed. For perhaps the first time in his life, he had nothing to say. He turned and walked to the elevator. Minrock pressed the button for him. As the doors closed, Marcus called out, "You'll come crawling back. When you see what he really is, you'll come crawling back." The elevator descended. Silence filled the penthouse. Azariah realized she was shaking. Jaeha's hand was still on her back, grounding her. She turned to him and was startled to see something like approval in his expression. He typed on his phone, "You did well." "I don't feel like I did well. I feel like I'm going to throw up." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. He gestured toward the kitchen, and she followed numbly. He poured her water, made her sit at the counter, and stood close enough that she could feel his presence like a shield. "He's going to make trouble," Azariah said. "He and Coulter both." Jaeha nodded and typed, "Let them try. You don't understand. Coulter has political connections. Marcus has money and influence. They can make things difficult for you." He showed her his phone. "I have survived worse than a politician and a social climber. They're inconveniences, not threats." "Why are you so calm?" "Because panic accomplishes nothing. Because I planned for this contingency when I agreed to your fiction. Because protecting you is now a matter of my reputation, and my reputation is everything." The words should have felt cold, transactional. Instead, they steadied her. Jaeha wasn't doing this out of sentiment or pity. He was doing it because he'd committed to it, because to do otherwise would damage the carefully constructed image he'd built. It was honest in a way that felt more solid than false reassurances would have been. "Thank you," she said. Again. Jaeha inclined his head. Then he glanced at his watch and typed, "The stylist will be here soon. You should prepare." The stylist turned out to be a fierce Korean-American woman named Hannah who took one look at Azariah and started issuing orders. For the next 3 hours, Azariah was measured, dressed, photographed, and critiqued. Hannah brought racks of clothes, drawers of jewelry, cases of shoes. "You're the wife of Jaeha Kwon," Hannah said, holding up a dress in deep emerald. "You need to look like power and elegance. Not trying too hard, not invisible. Memorable but not flashy." "No pressure," Azariah muttered. Hannah smiled. "You have good bone structure and you carry yourself well. This isn't difficult. We just need to refine." By the time she was done, Azariah barely recognized herself. The emerald dress hugged her curves without being revealing, elegant heels added 3 inches to her height, and Hannah had styled her hair in loose waves that looked effortless, but probably required a degree in physics to achieve. "Perfect," Hannah declared. "Now you look like you belong beside him." The words stung slightly, as if Azariah needed to be transformed to be worthy. But when she walked into the living room where Jaeha waited, she saw his expression shift fractionally. His eyes tracked over her slowly, and for the first time, she saw something other than calm calculation in his face. He typed on his phone, "You look beautiful." Heat flooded her cheeks. "Thank you. Where are we going?" "Lunch at the Heights. Very public, very visible. We need to be seen together as a couple. And I need to act like I'm madly in love with you." His mouth quirked. "Or at least comfortable in my presence. Madly in love might be excessive for a marriage we've allegedly kept secret for 3 months. Fair point. Still, the idea of performing affection for a man she barely knew, in public, while cameras inevitably watched, made her stomach twist. As if sensing her anxiety, Jaeha typed, "Follow my lead. Stay close to me. Don't engage with reporters if they approach. Minrock will handle any questions. What if they ask me directly? Then smile and say no comment. Or lean into me and let me answer through Minrock." Right. Because he didn't speak to women in public. This was going to be the strangest lunch of her life. The Heights was Seattle's most exclusive restaurant, the kind of place where tech billionaires entertained and deals worth millions were negotiated over truffle risotto. The maitre d' greeted Jaeha with deep respect and guided them to a corner table with perfect sight lines, far enough from other diners for privacy, visible enough that everyone would know they were there. Jaeha held out Azariah's chair, a gesture so smoothly executed that she wondered how many times he'd performed this ritual with women he actually wanted to be with. None, she realized. He doesn't date. He doesn't interact with women beyond business necessities. So why had he agreed to her desperate fiction? She was still pondering that when she noticed heads turning. Whispers rippling through the restaurant. A woman at a nearby table subtly raising her phone. "We're being photographed," Azariah murmured. Jaeha nodded slightly and reached across the table, taking her hand in his. The gesture looked natural, possessive in a gentle way. His thumb brushed over the ring on her finger, a reminder, maybe, or just part of the performance. His touch sent electricity through her nervous system. "Focus," she told herself. "This is fake. All of it is fake." Minrock appeared at a discreet distance, running interference with restaurant staff and keeping watchful eyes on their surroundings. A waiter brought water and menus, his professional demeanor not quite hiding his curiosity. Jaeha studied his menu, then gestured at something and looked at Azariah with raised eyebrows, a question. "The salmon sounds good," she said, understanding. He nodded and indicated that to the waiter, then ordered for himself in rapid Korean. They were halfway through the meal, during which Jaeha had somehow managed to be attentive without speaking, anticipating her needs for water or bread with small gestures, when Coulter appeared. He materialized at their table with the confidence of a man used to commanding attention, his campaign smile firmly in place despite the anger burning in his eyes. "Azariah," he said warmly, as if they were old friends reuniting. "What a surprise seeing you here." Jaeha's hand tightened fractionally on his wine glass. Minrock moved closer, but Coulter raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. "I just want to talk to my fiancé," Coulter said, his voice carrying to nearby tables. "Surely that's not too much to ask." "I'm not your fiancé," Azariah said clearly. "I'm married." Coulter's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went cold. To him? "Come on, Azariah. We both know this is some kind of stunt. Whatever he's paying you, whatever he's threatening you with." Jaeha stood in one smooth motion. He didn't look angry, his expression remained perfectly controlled, but his body language radiated danger. He pulled out his phone, typed rapidly, and handed it to Minrock. "Mr. Kwon says you have 5 seconds to walk away from his wife before he makes you walk away," Minrock said pleasantly. "He's counting." Coulter laughed, but it sounded forced. "You're going to threaten me? In public? For seconds? This is insane. Azariah, talk sense into your." 3 seconds. Azariah stood as well, moving closer to Jaeha. His arm came around her waist immediately, protective and possessive. She looked at Coulter, at the man her stepfather had chosen for her, at the future she'd escaped, and felt nothing but relief. "I'm exactly where I want to be," she said. "Leave us alone, Coulter." 2 seconds, Minrock said. "Sir, I should mention that the security cameras in this restaurant are all monitored, and there are at least 6 people currently filming this interaction with their phones. If you force Mr. Kwon to physically remove you, it will be documented. Is your political career really worth it?" Coulter's facade cracked. For just a moment, Azariah saw the rage beneath, not heartbreak over losing her, but fury at being denied something he considered his property. "This isn't over," he said quietly, echoing Marcus's words from earlier. "Not even close." He turned and walked away, pausing to glad hand a table of donors on his way out. Always the politician, even in defeat. Azariah realized she was gripping Jaeha's jacket. She released it slowly, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I didn't think he'd." Jaeha gently lifted her chin with one finger, making her look at him. His dark eyes were intense, searching her face. Then he pulled out his phone with his free hand and typed one-handed, not releasing her. "You have nothing to apologize for." He's establishing that he won't accept the situation quietly. "We expected this. Are you all right?" Azariah nodded, though her heart was still racing. "I just keep making enemies for you." His mouth curved slightly. He typed, "I already had plenty of enemies. A few more won't hurt." They finished the meal with the restaurant buzzing around them. As they left, Jaeha kept his arm around Azariah's waist, guiding her through the crowd of onlookers and phone cameras. His touch was firm, his body positioned between her and the rest of the world. In the car, Azariah slumped against the leather seat. "How often do we have to do that?" Jaeha typed, "Until the story is established and accepted." A week, maybe 2 of regular public appearances. Then we can be more selective. A week or 2 of pretending to be in love with you while my ex-fiancé and my stepfather plot revenge. This is going to be fun. Something that might have been a laugh shook Jaeha's shoulders, silent, brief, but genuine. He typed, "You have a sense of humor. That will help." Back at the penthouse, Azariah changed out of the designer dress into jeans and a sweater Hannah had left, clothes that felt like her own identity rather than a costume. She found Jaeha in his office again, working on his laptop with the intensity of a man who ran multiple businesses, legitimate and otherwise. She knocked softly. He looked up, nodded permission for her to enter. "Can I ask you something?" Azariah settled into the chair across from him. "Your rule. About not speaking to women. Will you ever tell me why?" Jaeha's expression shuddered. He turned back to his laptop, and she thought he'd refuse to answer. Then his fingers moved across the keys, not typing an email, but opening a document. He turned the laptop toward her. "7 years ago, I was engaged to be married. Her name was Mina. She was beautiful, intelligent, from a good family. I thought I loved her. 2 weeks before the wedding, I discovered she'd been working with a rival organization. Everything between us, every conversation, every intimate moment, had been intelligence gathering. She'd recorded me, documented my business dealings, past information that led to the deaths of 3 of my men. When I confronted her, she laughed and said I'd been easy to manipulate because I talked too much in bed. I broke the engagement. She disappeared. And I made a vow, no woman would ever use my words against me again." The silence that followed felt heavy with old pain. Azariah read the words twice, understanding crystallizing. "So you stopped talking to them entirely?" Jaeha nodded. He typed more, safer, clearer. No possibility of misunderstanding or manipulation. It became part of my image, the silent mafia boss. People respect mystery, fear the unknown. It served me well, even if it's lonely. His fingers paused over the keys. He looked at her with an expression that might have been surprise. "Lonely implies I need something I don't have. I have my work, my people, my purpose, but no one to talk to. Not really." Jaeha stared at her for a long moment. Then he typed, "You talk enough for both of us. Perhaps that's why I agreed to your fiction. A wife who doesn't expect me to perform emotional availability." The words should have stung. Instead, Azariah smiled. "So I'm useful because I don't need you to be someone you're not." That's refreshingly honest. Something shifted in Jaeha's expression, a softening that lasted only a second before his guard came back up. He closed the laptop and stood, clearly ending the conversation. But as Azariah left his office, she thought about what he'd shared. The betrayal. The vow. The 7 years of self-imposed silence. Jaeha Kwon had built walls so high and thick that no one could scale them. She wondered what it would take to make him lower them. And why, exactly, she wanted to try. The next few days fell into a strange routine. Mornings, Jaeha worked while Azariah explored the penthouse or read from his extensive library. Afternoons brought public appearances, lunches, art gallery openings, charity events where they performed the role of newlyweds with increasing ease. Evenings, they sat in his living room, her reading or working on her laptop while he reviewed business documents, the silence between them oddly comfortable. He communicated through texts and notes, but also through gestures. A hand on her back meant stay close. A look toward the exit meant time to leave. A subtle shake of his head meant don't engage with that person. They developed a silent language of their own. On the 4th night, Azariah was in the kitchen making tea when Jaeha appeared, looking unusually tense. He pulled out his phone and showed her a news article. Wainwright launches ethics investigation into alleged criminal connections. Coulter had gone public, using his position as city councilman to demand an investigation into Jaeha's business dealings. The article was carefully worded, just enough innuendo to plant seeds of doubt without making actionable claims. "He's trying to hurt you through official channels," Azariah said, reading quickly. Using his political position too, she stopped, something clicking into place. "Wait. He can't do that if there's a conflict of interest. If I was engaged to him, and now I'm married to you, that's a personal connection. He'd have to recuse himself from anything involving you, or it looks like a personal vendetta. Jaeha's eyes sharpened with interest. He typed, "You understand politics. My stepfather dragged me to enough fundraisers and strategy sessions. I learned how the game works." She kept reading. "But Coulter's smart. He's not leading the investigation himself. He's just calling for one. Let someone else do the dirty work while he plays victim. Betrayed fiancé concerned about corruption in Seattle." He typed, "What would you do if you were managing this situation?" Azariah thought about it. "I'd beat him at his own game." "You donate to charity, right?" "Children's hospitals, women's shelters, education programs." He nodded. "Then lean into that. Hard. Host a fundraiser for domestic violence survivors. Make a major donation in both our names. Announce a scholarship program. Make it about helping people, not defending yourself. Let your actions speak louder than his words. And make sure I'm visibly beside you for all of it, proof that you're not the monster he's painting you as." Jaeha stared at her for a long moment. Then he typed, "You're smarter than I expected." "Gee, thanks." His mouth quirked. "I mean it as a compliment. You think strategically. That's rare." He started typing rapidly, sending emails or texts. Within an hour, Minrak appeared with a team of publicists and event planners. By midnight, they'd outlined a comprehensive response strategy that positioned Jaeha and Azariah as philanthropic partners committed to Seattle's well-being. As the team left, Jaeha typed, "You should run my public relations." "I should finish my degree first," Azariah said wryly. "I had 2 semesters left when all this started." He raised an eyebrow. "What were you studying?" "Political science, with a minor in business administration." "I wanted to work in nonprofit management, maybe policy advocacy. Help people, not manipulate them." She paused. "My stepfather and Coulter had other plans. Trophy wife plays better for their image than career woman." Jaeha's expression darkened. He typed, "After this is over, you finish your degree. I'll cover the costs." "You don't have to. I'm investing in an asset. You've already proven your value." The words should have felt cold, but Azariah understood. This was how Jaeha showed care, through actions, not sentiments. Through opening doors rather than making promises. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded and stood, clearly planning to return to his office. But Azariah stopped him with a question. "Do you ever regret it?" The vow. 7 years of silence. Jaeha's hand stilled on his phone. He typed slowly, sometimes. "When I need to give commands in urgent situations. When something requires immediate clarification. But regret implies I would change it. I wouldn't. It's kept me alive and in power. But at what cost? What cost? I'm successful. Feared. Respected. I've built an empire." "You're lonely," Azariah said gently. "You're surrounded by people, but you're completely alone. That's a hell of a cost, Jaeha." He stared at her, and for the first time, she saw cracks in his careful control. His jaw tightened. His fingers moved over his phone keys, then stopped. He tried again. Deleted whatever he'd written. Finally, he typed just 2 words. "Good night, Azariah." She watched him walk away, watched the rigid set of his shoulders, and realized something important. Jaeha Kwon's silence wasn't just protection. It was a prison he'd built for himself. And he'd been locked inside it for so long that he'd forgotten what it felt like to be free. The fundraiser was held in a waterfront venue with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. 500 of Seattle's wealthiest citizens paid $1,000 per plate to attend, with all proceeds going to a domestic violence prevention program. Jaeha had personally matched every donation dollar for dollar. Azariah wore a gown in midnight blue, her hair swept up, jewelry that Jaeha had given her real, expensive, part of maintaining their image. She played her role perfectly, the devoted wife supporting her husband's philanthropy, gracious with guests, comfortable in this world of wealth and influence. But underneath the performance, she watched Jaeha. Watched how people approached him with a mixture of respect and fear. Watched how carefully he controlled every interaction. Watched how isolated he was despite being surrounded by hundreds of people. Midway through the event, Coulter made his entrance. Of course he did. This was a public event for a good cause. He couldn't be seen avoiding it without looking petty. He worked the room with politician's ease, shaking hands and sharing smiles. But his trajectory was clear. He was heading toward them. Azariah felt Jaeha tense beside her. His hand found the small of her back, protective. "Mr. Kwon," Coulter said, extending his hand with that perfect smile. "Wonderful event. Very generous of you." Jaeha didn't take his hand. He simply nodded once, the gesture somehow conveying absolute dismissal. Coulter's smile tightened. He turned to Azariah. "You look beautiful. That dress is stunning." "Thank you," Azariah said coolly. "I've been meaning to reach out," Coulter continued, his voice carrying to nearby listeners, "to apologize for any misunderstanding between us. I clearly misread our relationship. I hope we can part as friends." It was a masterful play. Publicly gracious, privately cutting. Implying that their engagement had been a misunderstanding that Azariah had led him on. Making himself the reasonable party. Before Azariah could respond, Jaeha pulled out his phone and typed rapidly. He handed it to Minrock, who'd appeared at his side. "Mr. Kwon says there's no misunderstanding," Minrock read aloud, his voice carrying clearly. "His wife was clear in her intentions when she left your engagement party to be with her husband. He appreciates your gracious acceptance of the situation and hopes you find happiness elsewhere." The words were perfectly polite and absolutely cutting. Husband. Wife. Her husband. The possessiveness was deliberate and public. Coulter's mask slipped fractionally. "Of course. Well, I wish you both the best." He leaned closer to Azariah, voice dropping. "Enjoy it while it lasts. Men like him don't keep women around long. You'll be replaced soon enough." Azariah felt fury rise in her chest. But before she could respond, Jaeha moved. He stepped between her and Coulter, his body language unmistakably aggressive. Then he did something that made the entire room go silent. He spoke. "Leave." One word. Quiet. Controlled. But absolutely final. The room erupted in whispers. Heads turned. Phones appeared. Jaeha Kwon, the man who famously never spoke to women, who communicated through silence and intermediaries, had just spoken. In public. In defense of his wife. Coulter's face went white, then red. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. But there was nothing he could say that wouldn't make things worse. He turned and walked away, his exit watched by hundreds of eyes. Jaeha turned back to Azariah, his dark eyes intense. He'd just shattered his own rule. Broken his 7-year vow. For her. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. He pulled out his phone, but his hands were shaking slightly. He typed, "Yes, I did." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. People whispered and stared. The story was already spreading. Jaeha Kwon had spoken to defend his wife. The silent mafia boss had found his voice for this mysterious woman who'd appeared from nowhere. In the car afterward, Azariah finally broke the silence. "You just destroyed 7 years of carefully constructed image." Jaeha stared out the window at the Seattle skyline. He typed without looking at her. It was worth it. "Why?" He turned to face her, and the intensity in his expression made her breath catch. He typed slowly, deliberately, because some things matter more than protection. "Because you deserve to be defended. Because he insulted you, and I won't tolerate that." Jaeha. Azariah didn't know what to say. Her throat felt tight. He typed more, besides. Perhaps 7 years is long enough to hide. They didn't speak or type for the rest of the drive. But when they reached the penthouse, Jaeha didn't immediately disappear into his office. He stood in the living room, looking out at the city lights, his shoulders less rigid than usual. Azariah moved to stand beside him. "What happens now? People will expect you to start speaking normally." He pulled out his phone. "I'll speak when it matters. To you. To people I trust. Not to everyone. The mystery remains, just modified. Strategic evolution." He nodded, something that might have been amusement in his expression. He typed, "You've changed things, Azariah." "Changed me. I don't know if that's good or dangerous." "Maybe both," she said softly. They stood in silence, the false marriage feeling less false with every passing moment. Azariah knew she should be careful, should maintain emotional distance from this arrangement. But when Jaeha's hand found hers in the darkness, fingers intertwining, she didn't pull away. This was supposed to be temporary, a solution to immediate problems. But standing beside him, feeling the warmth of his hand in hers, Azariah realized something terrifying. She was falling for her fake husband. And she had no idea if he felt anything beyond strategic partnership. The question would have to wait. Because outside, in the world they'd stirred up with their public fiction, Marcus and Coulter were planning their next move. And the real danger was just beginning. If you enjoyed this intense beginning to Azariah and Jaeha's story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more captivating romance stories. Comment below what you think will happen next. Will Jaeha and Azariah's fake marriage become real, or will their enemies tear them apart? Part 2 is coming soon, so make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you don't miss it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.